Let's talk about Billie Eilish, specifically her drummer, Andrew Marshall. Now, Andrew is absolutely considered a pioneer of hybrid drums, electronic drums, and doing these sorts of techniques on a massive live pop gig. He's incredibly creative, he's a genius, and you'll be able to see that through everything I'm just about to talk about. But let's talk about what he's using, how he's using it, and how you can use it too. Golden flame, they water, poison rain, perfect. Looking at his setup, it seems to have stayed pretty consistent throughout the years. So here's a picture of his 2019 setup, and as you can see throughout the kit, it's really cool, it's really creative, and we've got 7 different triggers spread around, and these seem to be consistent all the way up to now. So diving in straight away, the triggers that we have from left to right is the Roland PD8, and from what I can gather, these are all Roland triggers, so I presume he is a Roland endorsee. Then on the snare drum, the main snare drum, we've got the RT30, I presume the HR, the dual, but it could be the H as well, and the RT30K on the kick, which you can just see just nestled away there. Then we've got the cool part, which are the 3 V-drum mesh heads. I'm pretty sure these are the PDS 100, I think. Are they called PDS 100? PDX 100. These pads are the Roland PDX 100s, which come with like the TD50, some of the other electric kits. And I love this because where they're positioned underneath the ride as if they're toms, the mesh heads feel a little bit nicer and a little bit more natural than say the rubber pad of the PD8. So if you have the chance to try this, you absolutely should, especially if you're choosing between the rubber PD8 and the V-drum mesh pads. Consider how you're using it, because both will do the same thing. At this point, it's a case of feel. And then finally, you can see next to his bass drum pedal, he's got the Roland KT10 kick trigger. Now all of this is going into the TM6, which did used to be the SPDSX. In an interview with Z Sounds, I think that's how I pronounce it, he mentioned using the SPDSX before getting the Billie gig and then moving to this TM6 Pro for this one. Now you might be thinking the TM6, well, how can he have 7 triggers if he's got 6 trigger inputs? It's because you can actually have 12 trigger inputs on the TM6 because they're all dual trigger inputs. So you would have to have 12 individual triggers, but that's still 12 triggers. Then it's going trigger, TM6 Pro, and then into Ableton. So the TM6 is acting as this sort of halfway house, this MIDI interface, if you will. And then actually all of the sounds are coming from Ableton. I'll get into all of that in a little second. Like I said, this setup seems pretty consistent throughout the tours. That's a 2019 setup. You can see his 2023 setup here on his Instagram, and it's mostly the same, maybe a few differences here and there, but at its core, all of the triggers are the same. I have noticed that there's an extra snare trigger on the side snare, so that's one more thing, but the rest seems the same. And the great thing about those snare triggers is you can make a snare drum sound amazing. Check this out. Obviously that's on his main snare, but if you apply that to a side snare as well, where you've got this beefy low snare, and then you add a trigger to it with some reverb, some EQs, oof, you can get some pretty good stuff. So let's talk specifically about what these triggers are for, because there's a lot of them and there's a lot of different variations of them. And it's also probably more triggers than you generally see on a pop gig, or at least they're much more upfront, whereas on another pop gig, they might be hidden around everywhere. So Billie Eilish's tracks are very thought out, they're very specific in the sounds that Phineas and Billie want, and so replicating that live is really, really important. And so rather than having thousands of pads and triggers to do all the sounds, Andrew has compiled this into a setup that works for him and can do it throughout. So for example, on a song, it'll automate the changes. So check this video out where you can see that the pads change sound as he plays. And it starts getting really cool because you can apply all of this throughout the entire gig on every single trigger. That's why going through the TM6 and into Ableton is so important for something like this, because the options are almost endless. It's also great for rehearsals as well, where you need to make really quick changes without having to re-import to the SPDSX.
Like when I first started playing with her, I didn't have a lot of time. The audition was maybe 3.5 weeks before we left for the tour or something. And I was running the tracks too. And it really, like putting my drum sounds in Ableton was equally a function of just efficiency as it was like taking advantage of all the things that Ableton offers. I mean, I knew that if I was having to edit tracks and deal with the computer all the time, having my drum sounds on the same screen was going to just help me, because I was going to be able to like level things and move things around the pads rather than being, you know, having to balance things out and like load them onto the SPD or whatever.
So earlier I mentioned talking about Ableton and the automation and that sort of thing. And in these videos, I always like to try and explain how this works so you can do it too. Now, this is actually a really complicated setup, but the basis of it is really simple. The complicated bit is actually sitting there and doing it for a whole gig and automating everything. And even that's not complicated, it's just, it takes a long time. So for you to replicate this, first things first is trying to get the pad into Ableton. So for me, I'd normally go pad SPDSX and then use the MIDI from that into Ableton. And that's what I'm pretty sure Andrew was doing before the TM6. Doesn't need to be any Roland gear. It basically literally just needs to have trigger inputs and a MIDI output to your computer. That's all you need. You can actually skip a sample pad completely and go for a trigger module specifically, which doesn't house any sounds on it. It just sees the input from triggers, takes that MIDI and sends it to your computer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the technique to automate drum pads, because that is the baseline for Andrew's full setup. But if you did want to get really, really nerdy with me and you did want the full run through, then you can actually check out my full Ableton course on drumelectric.co.uk. For now though, here's the basics of how Andrew does it. So loading up Ableton, I've got my own Ableton template here to make loading things quicker and easier. So it comes with timecode, audio, click, samples, and different sections. If you want this template, you can also grab that at drumelectric.co.uk/Ableton template. The link is down below. It's not very expensive and it's really quite handy. I'm just going to drag my click just to that first chorus, just so we've got some audio. There we go. Now I do already have a drum pad built in with samples. And again, all of this comes with this template when you buy it. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a new one with an instrument rack. So I'm just going to type in instrument rack. There we go. I'm going to call it automations. And then within that instrument rack, I'm going to put a drum rack and I'm going to duplicate it as many times as I have a change in sample. So for this video, I'm going to duplicate it 3 times just to give you an idea of how this works so you can see it clearly. So for this, I'm actually going to click on the little keyboard at the top here, and my middle row on the keyboard, as you can see, becomes MIDI notes. So I'm just going to use the A key, that's down here, C3. And as you can see, it's currently activating on all 3 drum racks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my sample folder, and this is where I keep all of my samples, should I find them. But I'm going to get, I'm going to go to there because I really like these sounds. Let's go. Sounds pretty good. Volume velocity 0, volume 0, and that basically means it's equal every single time. On the second drum rack, I'm going to find a clap sound for no other reason than it just sounds different and it's good for this video. Move that to C3. There we go. Same thing. Velocity 0, volume 0. Now if I hit A, you can hear it at the same time, and I'll fix that in a second. For the third sound, let's just go classic DJ scratch sound. So now all 3, if you were to hit the pad, sounds like that, which is a bit mental. So we're going to use the chain feature here, and what you want to do is you want to move the mouse so you get the little double arrows and change it so drum rack 1 is either on 1, or in my case it's 0, 2 is on the next one up, and then 3 is on 3. Now I've done it 0, 1, 2, but actually out loud I probably should have done it 1, 2, 3, but here we are. So if I now trigger it, we can only hear the kick. If I move the chain selector, clap, DJ thing. So you can see where this is going. And now we're going to automate that chain selector. So to do that, I'm going to turn off the keyboard, open the automations, instrument rack, and then the chain selector. And then I'm just going to open it up on a new row. Just keep it nice and neat. We're going to go 0 here. Actually, where's 1 bar? There we go, 1 bar. So 1 bar of 0, the second bar being 1, and then the third bar being 2. So if I now turn the MIDI keyboard on and move the playhead, and I'm just going to randomly press the sound so you can hear it. Pretty cool. It means you can now automate that throughout the whole gig. Now, I did that with my keyboard, not any sample pads. If you buy this template, then the samples up here, this drum rack, is actually linked to the SPDSX. So when you buy it, you actually get an SPDSX pack that you can load onto your SPDSX, and it'll be all synced up so you can immediately play samples with it. You don't have to worry about anything, which is quite cool. Very proud of it. What can I say? I do like to update it as well, so as I find cool things like this, I'll then add it and you can have it with your project. So it's really cool in that sense. But more the point, you apply that to a full gig and all 7 triggers like Andrew had, and suddenly you've got something really, really cool and that changes throughout. There's a Patreon page with this YouTube channel that really supports what I do, so please feel free to check the link down below where you'll find everything else that you need. And that is how Andrew uses his triggers with Billie Eilish.